you have given the game, you've given the people so much of your spirit, so much of your energy. The city. I mean, I said it, and I meant it. And when I had the opportunity to meet you, it was surreal. Like I said, you're arguably the most respected voice when it comes to Philadelphia Eagles football. And as I was doing my research, I had to ask myself, how does a New York kid end up in El Paso and then ends up getting drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles? I need you to walk me through that process.
Well, it's a story. There's no doubt about that. So when I graduated from high school, man, I weighed 195 pounds. Same height. Been this tall since I was in the 9th grade. And, coming from New York, not a whole lot of schools. Back then, New York was a basketball state. There wasn't a whole lot of football players coming out of New York. So I wasn't heavily recruited. Some of the bigger colleges that I did visit, they wanted me to either go to a prep school for a year to put on some weight or, go to a junior college. And I pretty much wasn't with that. I was being recruited by a junior college in New York, and the assistant head coach, or the head coach, got the assistant head coaching job down in El Paso, Texas. So I agreed to, take the trek down to El Paso. Didn't go on a recruiting trip. Had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Right.
And went down there as a walk-on, believe it or not. And I started 6 games my freshman year. By the time we got done with spring ball that following spring, I was on full scholarship. Was a starter the rest of my career in college. Played both inside and outside backer. I moved from inside to outside my sophomore year. Then I played inside against, running teams, and then outside against passing teams my junior year, and then strictly played inside, my senior year, which probably hurt my draft stock because I was always, more of an outside linebacker than inside backer.
Right. You played the game with a lot of speed, with a lot of physicality.
Yeah. And then got drafted by the Eagles. I didn't, coming out of college. I was ranked in the top 5 linebackers, my senior year coming out. But I didn't get invited to the combine. I didn't get invited to any of the bowl games. And there was really, a lot of schools came and worked me out, but there was really one scout with the Eagles at the time that really took a liking to me. And he kind of guided me and directed me on what I should work on and what I should do as these teams were coming in to work me out. But he went back in and recommended to Buddy Ryan, that I was a player that they should, seriously consider. So I got drafted by the Eagles in the 8th round. My rookie year, I got cut the first 2 games of my rookie year. If you're probably too young to remember, but Keith Byers was drafted in the 1st round that year. And then we drafted another linebacker in the 2nd round out of Florida, All-American, by the name of Alonzo Johnson. So they were trying to trade Keith Byers, throughout that process. But I think his name was Ernest Jackson, was a running back that we had on the team. He was a pretty good player, but everybody in the league knew that, Buddy was going to start Keith. So they were trying to figure out, okay, there was no value for Ernest, knowing that, they were trying to trade him. So I came back week 3, played special teams. By the time I got to week 7 or week 8, I got called into Buddy's office. I'm thinking I'm about to get cut again. And he calls me in. He's like, learn your shit. I'm starting you this week, not because I want to, but because I have to. And we had a whole bunch of injuries at the linebacker position. So I started my first game against the Detroit Lions at the Vet. Had a really good game and never lost my starting job, from that point forward. And that year I got drafted. I think we drafted like 3, maybe 4 other linebackers ahead of me. 2 years later, all of them were gone. I was the only one left standing. And as they say, the rest is history.
So, before we get too deep into the current Eagles talk, right, I got to ask you, because you said something really interesting, how all those guys that were taken ahead of you, right? You know, being from New York, not really known for football, you know, kind of taking, you know, the long route to get to where you wanted to be. How did you establish yourself as a player? How did you establish yourself as the player that we all knew you to be, especially in Philadelphia, where you became an Eagles Hall of Famer? Because again, humble beginnings, you took the long route, and now you're an Eagles Hall of Famer. How did you maintain that diligence, that will to be to not be denied what you felt like you deserved?
Well, you know, some people will say certain things are a blessing and certain things are a curse.
Mm,
And when I walked out of that building, you know, released right before week 1 of the season, you know, I can retrospectively look back on that and say that, you know, that's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Um,
hmm,
I think sometimes, you know, we can get complacent with where we are and think that we've arrived. I can remember in training camp, you know, G Cobb was the veteran on the team at the time. And I can remember all the young bucks sitting around talking about what we was going to do, you know, when we made the team. And he started laughing. He said, all y'all don't think y'all going to make the team, do you? And we were like, what are you talking about? We got drafted here. And he was like, listen, man, you know, there's veterans on this team that have experience that's going to make the team over the lion's share of you guys. He said, so think about how much playing time you're getting throughout preseason. Not a lot,
mm,
you know, until the end of the game. He said, but, you know, there's going to be 2 or 3 spots on this team for special teams player. And that like resonated with me. And from that point on, I was just a special teams demon, you know, and that was my way in. But as I, you know, when I got cut, those 2 weeks were probably the most depressing 2 weeks of my entire life. So when I got called back, my perspective was completely different. There was, you know, I took nothing for granted. I prepared, you know, each and every week, special teams wise, because I knew that's where I get the majority of my play. The only team that I wasn't on special teams wise was the field goal block. Every other special teams, I was on it. You know,
mm.
all the cover teams, I was on it. And the return team, the punt return team. Um, so I was out there giving maximum effort, trying to ensure that I would never be cut again. Um, and then the whole time, you know, I'm trying to learn the 46 defense. We all were trying to learn it. You know, I don't think it was until my second year that everybody really had a full grasp of the defense and, you know, what our responsibilities were. So there was like this growth period. And fortunately for me, you know, a lot of the veterans on the team, well, they were learning just the same way I was learning. But
Right.
I was like, so I was committed, man. I mean, I would work on my special team stuff and then I watch film and I prepare and I take notes and I'd watch film. Um, and I would study the game plan each and every week like I was starting, you know, because my philosophy has been and always will be in every endeavor is to be ready so I don't have to get ready, you know. So when my number was called, knowing that, you know, when it was called, I probably was only going to get one opportunity. I was ready to play, man, and I was prepared. And yeah, I made my mistakes, but they weren't so glaring and so big, you know, where you could see, you know, I was a weak link, you know.
Mm,
So my thing is preparation. You know, if I'm prepared, I can be confident. If I'm confident, I can go out and just allow my talents to do what it needs to do. But my motto is be ready so you don't have to get ready. And then, you know, it took a little bit of time, you know, for my confidence to grow because, you know, I was just talking to my son the other day, you know, the most vital element for any professional athlete, you know, it's not speed, it's not size, it's not, you know, strength. It's none of those things. It's not even the intangibles that most of these kids, you know, go to the combine. Those things are, you know, those are metrics. The most important thing that you can have as an athlete is confidence, because when
mm,
you believe in yourself and you believe in what you're doing and you believe in your ability to get the job done, um, it's a tremendous um, it's a tremendous boost to where you want to get to. Because believe it or not every player out on the field believes in himself, you know, and it
wow.
takes time for you to get to a point where, you know, you're confident. And then it has to escalate in order for you to be great. It has to escalate to a place where, you know, inwardly, there's this conceit, almost a cockiness that lives inside of you. Now we see players, we've seen players throughout the history of the game, you know, who have been outwardly cocky and confident. And the average person looks at that person and is like, yeah, he's a good player, but he's an asshole. You know, you don't ever want to embody that. But deep down inside, you got to think you're the best thing since sliced bread, and then go out there and play that way. So those are the elements, you know, when I look back retrospectively over my career, those are the elements and things that I can look at and say, you know, played a vital part, I should say, you know, in my success in my 13 years in the league.